Through the Noise with your host, Ernesto Glucksmann.
George, man, thanks for coming on my show, but I might be on your show. We might be sharing this episode between us. George Weiner, you're the CEO of Whole Whale.
That's correct. And Ernesto, how do you like yourself titled? How do you most commonly refer to yourself when you intro?
I'm a partner. I'm a founder and a partner of Through the Noise Consulting. So, but most people just kind of know me with the host of Through the Noise podcast. So, I guess host is it.
I love the Through the Noise brand. It's like so clear. You're like, oh yeah, signal to noise. That's the thing. The one I want to hear. It's great.
Or that's the idea, right? I was just kind of when I started this show, 7 years ago, like I got kind of enamored with just podcasting right around then, where it's just so obvious now, but long form conversation, where else can you really do it or have it if it's not in a podcast right now? And just kind of stuck. And next thing you know, the company we used to go by, infamia.com, which is just kind of an empty vessel. No one knows how to spell it or how to say it, but it didn't matter. We're a tech company, it was kind of the thing you used to have back in the day, just kind of come up with a strange name. Just kind of went by the wayside because everybody found out about the podcast, started listening, and Through the Noise seemed to stick more for everybody. So, okay, we'll just do that. We share it with the heavy metal band, though. There's a heavy metal band, Through the Noise. If you Google that, it's a pretty good band.
Yeah, I imagine a pretty overlappy audience on that.
Oh yeah, definitely. We share fan bases
and social impact podcasting.
Yeah. And how did you get into the Whole Whale podcast? Because that's a great show too. You guys doing pretty well with that one.
Yeah, we're doing all right. It's the little engine that could in the corner. And frankly, like I believe in doing the things that you wanted to do as a child and following that through. And so I, like many kids, had their own, I had my own little radio show. And so it was like part of like doing that as like the real work of Whole Whale as a B-Corp digital agency working with social impact organizations is like what we do. And podcasting makes sure I still like my job when I wake up in the morning and lets me talk to great folks. So
yeah,
it's also using that excuse to call up some really great people and learn, because I'm going to have these conversations anyway. I just happen to have a mic around.
That was the impulse. It's like I was having these conversations with these executives at these a lot of our work is with associations, and they were fascinating. They were enjoyable. There was just value there, but you'd have it over coffee, and then that was that, and you're just kind of like, wait a minute, I could just record it. We could just do this in the same thing in a studio, coffee, whatever coffee you want, and then repurpose that. And that's that's where we got the show started. And ever since then, I've been spending time around. We're in Washington, D.C., just going to these societies and membership-based groups, saying, hey, have you looked into podcasting? And funny enough, the story behind that is because we're mostly tech consultants, technology. We work with AMSs and databases and all the things that not many people are all that excited to talk about until that actually something's not working, and then they call us. But basically, we were working with communication teams, and they're putting out, everything that they do: press releases, social media, managing internal comms, external comms, dealing with the next fire. All of that was, grinding, grueling work. But why weren't they podcasting? Like, why was that missing? And truth be told, I'm still kind of wondering why it's taken so long. But slowly but surely, that's changed. I think maybe part of it was the podcast concept was a little, just the name podcast had kind of a faddish sort of maybe toy-like nerdy thing. What's the truth? Who's really going to listen to this? Was one executive had once told me. I should reach out to that person. It's changed.
Send him the press release of Joe Rogan selling for $100 million. Be like,
yeah,
there's something here.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Like Joe Rogan, that's an entertaining show, right? Can like the Association for Manufacturers of whatever, widgets can they pull off something like that? Not likely at all. But what the thing is that these organizations, they do represent some authority of their world, and there's expertise there, and the listeners are going to really want to listen to that are the people that they are speaking to their wallets, like what's important to the owners, and or maybe it's a membership society, maybe to the practitioners, to the doctors or nurses or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the group represents, there are people that are going to really care. They'll have their entertainment podcast that they listen to a little later, but they're going to be tuned into what the society they're a member of is talking about, to understand how they can do better, right? I mean, that was my pitch. That's kind of how I shared it, and it doesn't land on everybody. It takes time, and sometimes it's just, when there's enough of when there's enough of, like when I started finally getting inquiries going, hey, here's this podcast by this other blah, blah, blah association. Could you help us set ours up? And I'm like, yes, thank you for, it's been 7-year odyssey explaining. Sure, I can help you with that. Let's get started.
Yeah,
that was the story. Yeah. And so can you tell me about you guys though, on the, the whole whale, the B-Corp component, definitely curiosity for me, because I looked at that and it's complicated.
Yeah, it seems like you're B-Corp curious.
Definitely.
You're like, what's that all about? little like, wait a minute, what is that club? Do I really want to be a part of it?
Yeah, it is a club. It is a certification. It is a thing you earn your way into. You have a handshake?
We don't have a handshake. I can't speak to that.
No? Oh, all right. Well,
the B-Corp process for us. So we've been around. We were founded about a decade ago, and at first, it was like in the infancy of B-Corp. At that period of time, I remember looking at it a few years in, being like, I don't really get it. I don't think this is worth it. Why am I going to pay like whatever? I'm going to just pick a number out of the sky, like $1,000 or something out of my tight budget, and then like annually pay to be a part of this group. Like, people can see that we work with nonprofits. Go to our page. That's what we do, right? If you can't see it and I need to put a stamp on us, this is my pre-apply. And after going through this like grueling survey, I was like, this is silliness. This is just branding. And then I put it on the shelf, right? I put it on the shelf for a few years and then came back. And just to be clear, I'm talking about the B-Corp group, right? That B-Corp certification, not the benefit corporation legal shift to your sort of bylaws and whatnot. So like they're, of course the brand's confusing here, but B-Corp is the more recognized, I'd say at this point, piece. And we went through the survey, went through the process because we had gotten to another sort of tier of size where it was a way for our company to quickly signal, right? We do a lot of virtue signaling as companies constantly, but it was a way for us to quickly signal to potential employees and to other vendors and to our clients that like, no, we've been vetted by this very intense process. And by the way, when you talk to another B Corp, you're like, oh, you went through that? Oh, yeah, I went through that. And it's sort of this like trial by fire because it's so ridiculous. You get points for all these different areas. You fill in different weighting for questions, and you have a publicly displayed score. You go through like a couple rounds of like in-depth questioning from people that like go through each of these pieces. And it took us like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months at the time. I think waiting times are now like 12 months. So it's like, it's a hurdle, right? And you have to be this tall to ride the ride. So that means that everybody in this room is over this height in that respect, if that makes sense.
So it was like early on, it was just like a grueling experience, it sounded like, to go through for you. But as you've grown and you've had to like expand and hire, that has benefited you. It has, helped you in that way. Like, do you have something that like tangibly helped you? Or
there's a job board network. There's an annual conference. I attended the conference. I kind of expected to get a little bit more business out of it, to be honest. I was able to learn a lot more, but it wasn't like a business generator necessarily. We have in turn actually looked and helped other, benefit corporations. Like we bought all our chocolate, for instance, for our gifts from like a wonderful B Corp that was like in the network. So we're like, when we need a thing, we're like, all right, let's go check the network and see what's there. So I think if I were selling a product, right now we're in that type of industry versus agency, there's different benefits depending on how you're approaching a B2B, B2C market. And on the B2C side, like it's powerful if you want something like as a like a certified U.S. organic, what have you. Like people are beginning to sort of discern it because groups like Patagonia jumped on, and like that's a brand lift, right?
Right. That is an investment then in the brand. That's the hardest part of any certification process. I mean, just having the executives that I've had on the show from different types of associations, having a recognizable certification process is half the challenge, right? Because like you can make the grueling, pass this standard and join my club, but then all right, we did it, and there's a few of us because it's so grueling, it's just too hard to get here. Now what, and but then that is just the beginning of a journey for those kinds of things, like where it becomes a shortcut in a consumer's eye when they're going through like, okay, organic. I mean, let's be honest, most people don't even really know what they have an idea. There's a feeling, there's thoughts around it, but maybe some people think organic means no pesticides. Well, you'd be surprised. They have to have pesticides, but there's just different types of pesticides. Okay, you really want to look at what it takes to get that thing to be such a nationally recognized symbol. It's no joke. It is a tremendous coordinating effort, and it just takes time. And so I don't know how you feel where your symbol that you've applied to, where they're at in their growth spurt. I mean, do you participate in like their board or members, their community, other than attending the event, do you volunteer in there, or do you just kind of...
They've got a pretty robust online platform that I think, there's like a job board running in there. There's like a lookup for other agencies, and there were sort of local sort of bee meetup things. Like everything is like hilariously bee branded that, we had kind of checked out. But it's kind of interesting because when you're talking about a B Corp, it's not like you're in a like v like. You're talking about like trade organizations. Like everyone walks in here is like machine workers. I understand this widget. But you walk into a room of B Corps and it's like we make milk. And I was like, I make digital. Okay. Right? Like Stonyfield Farm. I don't have much in common with you. I'm a sourced ingredient, person who's, sourcing farmers out of Nicaragua.
It's like going to your local business, I was like, chamber of commerce kind of thing. Right?
Right. So in terms of like the gatherings, they haven't been as helpful to me. However, again, looking back, it's like, I think it has been worth it. In that sort of like signaling effort and putting it especially on our digital assets and being able to quickly say it. Like I've actually incorporated it into like the language because it communicates quickly, like, oh, they're a double bottom line organization that they're doing things, right? So I say B Corp digital agency, and I did that at the beginning here. I used to just say like, we're a social impact digital agency, but I feel like
B Corp's there's a strength of process behind it. There's more to it.
Yeah, and more so than when I had first applied to it. I think we got accepted in 2017.
Okay. So that wasn't too long ago, but this B Corp Sigma hasn't been around that long either. Like it's just what can I ask you one? We can switch gears on this, but just one. What is how would you describe its essence? Like what is it that you have to map out with your business that's like the beyond part?
So like I think we actually have it on our site, but the cool thing is it breaks it down essentially across different elements of your business. So like you sort of like the environment, the labor elements, and so if you go to like About Us and like B Corporation on our site, I actually put and post our impact area scores of what we actually scored from that test. So impact score areas are governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. And then they give you like point totals, and you have to above X. X kind of moves occasionally, but I think at one point it was like around 80 or something that you had to be above. And so humble brag, we're at 91.2 on our B impact report.
A plus as far as I'm concerned. That's better than I ever did.
Yeah, it's better than I did in college. Oh, we've been certified. I'm such a liar. We were certified since June of 2019. So
2019.
You know what? I call that COVID aging. I have aged, and any company that's surviving right now, Yeah,
Hell
for
yes.
every quarter you survive, that's an extra year.
April was 10 years ago. Okay. April and March when we started. That was 10 years ago.
I'm so broken.
I wear a hat now because I
I'm
lost
so
all my hair.
broken.
You know what?
I think it was 2017.
No,
No,
totally.
literally last year at this time.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just do a little reset. Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Well, it sounds like that was pretty grueling. And when I remember looking into it, it was a grueling process to go through. And I would only argue that the only other more grueling experience to undergo as creating an organization or an entity is creating a nonprofit. Flat out. It's just the nonprofit. I admire my clients and like the work that they have to do and how they do it and how they have to justify it. But it also drives me insane how much they're hampered, especially on the charity side of, too much overhead, and we're in IT. We do IT work. Like you want to, if you're growing and trying to scale operations, you want to invest in, good databases, good tools, good communication services. And that's overhead if it's not attached to the program, to a specific, effort. And there's almost like a back pressure to not expand that too far beyond. And that's unfortunate because no one is ever going to question. I use always Costco because that's like one of my favorite brands. No one's going to question how much overhead they're going to invest necessarily into scaling up operations. It's probably an incredible amount, just given the size and scope of that brand and what they do and how they bring like the best in class to, it's gigantic amounts that you get on a pallet, and like, okay, this is olive oil. That's probably really, really olive oil, and you're going to get a bucket of it and pay for that, but it's going to be incredible value. So that is just like, no one questions that. That's just like, oh yeah, okay, that's how you got to do it. But on the nonprofit side, it's all exposed. It's all has to be justified. It all gets audited every year, which is the other part that I think is just so like crazy. Now, are there bad actors? Are there organizations that take advantage of the tax deductible status? I presume that's why they're so heavily, in my opinion, regulated. But it just seems to me an unfortunate situation because I feel like it's very hard for a nonprofit to scale and solve. And then, but oh, by the way, you're expecting them to solve some of the world's greatest problems. So, I don't know how you do that.
I do think
keep
it's
ranting
softened
on
a
it.
little bit. I think the rising generations have become a touch wiser. I think Dan Pilata's work in this world of like saying, overhead myth and that whole like, the book and the TED Talk and all those pieces of saying that, it's about getting that outcome achieved. And if you want to get it done, why are you criticizing the way that outcome had to get done with how, frankly, is a matter of how the CFO happens to categorize and get creative with like, wait a minute, did that server, help on the program side? Did it host a PDF that your members are downloading? That sounds programmatic to me. Did it take a IT company to manage the fact that that wasn't hacked so that your like it's so silly. It's like accounting.
Yeah. It's exactly it. But that is in and of itself that time and energy to do that and check and make sure you're justifying it reasonably well is grit in an organ. It is wasted effort, time, and energy. And when we do work with like public partnerships, it's a nonprofit with a federal mandate of some type. It gets even more complicated in justifying that, right? Because you're almost having to justify two different types of accounting systems in that, just to make sure that it's each program, every hour you spend on is it part of an initiative, or is it part of the organization, or is it part on behalf of the government? It's like, wow. So we just kind of stick our nose into the tech and try to help them deal with the tech so that to lift like their resources and mental energy to stay focused on what they're communicating and how they're doing it, because most of the time we're working with communications people. But yeah, and so in your world, like, can I ask you about the podcast? Like, how has the podcast been? It's the engine that could. Clearly you're in the same camp as I am. Love doing them. It's just baked into our mode. But I feel like it's also I don't know. I feel like in some circles, it's changing the way people are doing work in some ways, especially right now with COVID. Thanks,
Yeah.
COVID. You've made it a
Thanks.
little bit easier to push record and finally get
Yeah, it's easier. You have a little bit more time to record it, and like I'm sure my son is going to
pop
make
in
noise
there.
at some point during this, right? Like, well, I'd be very surprised if a 6-month-old popped in, but more pressure to him, more to him. The issue I think around the podcasting ultimately is that I think you walk in and expect a certain breadth of audience, right? You're on, like Apple, everyone can download it. It's easy to do it. More people are wearing like headphones and in-ear devices than ever before, and consumption is up. And so you expect a larger share of this attention when in fact what you're actually getting is a depth of attention and a depth of relationship with a smaller group of people, and that's important to me. And in that calculus, we have a lot of initiatives at Whole Whale that are designed at breadth, right? We do search engine optimization designed to like bring in tens of thousands of people to our website. We've got a YouTube channel that's designed to capture the attention on how-to types of things around pieces, and like those are big numbers, right? Between those, it's like 100,000 users a month. The podcast is like 5,000 a month. Like that doesn't even compare. Like if I'm only after broad sweeping
Yeah.
attention, I should not be creating podcasts. That said, it's about having, like you started this with, an in-depth conversation, able to explore a topic that deeply explains something to, and with, guests that we can pull on and have that type of that conversation.
Yeah, there's like and I haven't been able to like figure out a good way to uh I don't know, quantify. How do you quantify that is the problem. It's like you just kind of know if you're doing it right, or if if you have, you know, you could have. I guess one way I described it to a small group that wanted to consider podcasts, but I said if you had like the 5 of your major members listening, on your biweekly every week, how important would that be? Like, how much could you communicate with them if it was just the top 5? And we're talking about like, on the scale of like a Nike. Like, if you get the one guy in Nike, the head of Nike to listen to you, and CEO, whatever. I mean, for them, it was like an easy, like, oh, that would change everything. Okay, then what are you worried about? How many, like, how big the audience you need to get? It's not. Don't worry about that. That's your marketing. That's your other marketing material. That's your casting a wide net.
Yeah.
You're just all that type of stuff that you do well. All the impressions, how much you're going. Don't worry about that. Worry then about having now the real converse. Try to as real and honest as you can possibly have. It's very hard, let me tell you, for certain trade associations to do that. It's a very political spot for many of these like executives are in that. It's like they could say one word one way and it could signal like somehow they're playing more of a favor to their bigger sponsors or the smaller members, or it's so politicized, it's very difficult for them. But is, I think, kind of like the B-Corp certification. Go through the trial of fire of doing it, because it'll just make you into a better organization, just in the nature of the effort.
Well, you have to organize thoughts. You have to contact guests. And here's the interesting thing, especially, if we're talking to either a trade organization, like think about what happens when you pull in that expert and they're like flattered because, frankly, we're all little egomaniacs at some level and want our name on a billboard. But they're now a part of your organization in that conversation. And by the way, they then share that with their networks potentially as well. And what does that mean when it comes from their voice, be it on LinkedIn or other platforms? And two, what I've realized is that then in pitches, so like in terms of measurement, yeah, we measure downloads and that type of engagement totally. But also, like, we will get 1 or 2 clients a year, and that's perfectly fine for that amount of work that we put into it, and that's delightful. It pays for itself. But building on it, we then, if you're able to pull in more and more interesting guests, guess what? That's your logo talking about the B-Corp thing, to just like, hey, there's a narrative flow here. That is that person, that expert in the field, or that brand. So we've had a social impact person from Lyft on our
Really?
podcast.
Hey.
And I can send that around, be like, that's pretty cool. They weren't a client,
Yet.
but their brand, right? Their brand can be associated with mine, and I can share that episode with a relevant client pitch. And they're like, oh, they're talking to folks at Greenpeace. Oh, they're talking to people. Oh, at Twilio and all these places. And you're like, yeah, we've talked to them. How cool is like when they're like discovering a platform like a donation platform? I'm like, yeah, I didn't believe it, so I talked with their CEO. Here's the interview. So I think there's a lot more
Yeah.
in using it, but we just, and I say that in one term, and like on the side, I'm like always trying to like hack and figure out how to get more downloads because I'm a small child who also cares about reaching a little bit more.
That's your
Like
inner
I don't want to like
child.
pretend that I'm like
Oh, I want
satisfied with where we are. I'm like looking at like other people like, why are they getting so many more?
But you know what? That's funny because that's kind of that energy is what you can cultivate in a group. And so if you're
Yeah.
running a nonprofit or a business or whatever, that's the energy you can kind of like pull into and then get like really, I think, compelling. I've learned like so much from my interviews that I've had with these executives and just trying to understand, like, can I get an hour of your time just to see what it's like in your world for a little bit? Because half the time when you start a company, like I know what I do well, I just don't know how that necessarily applies into your universe. I can make assumptions, I can think of things, but I don't really know until I understand you as a person. And for me, that was a no-brainer in terms of starting our show. Well, it's like I just wanted to talk to these leaders and just get to know them. And it turns out that was the right move. There's a lot that happens off mic, off the recordings because of it. And I've had friendships. Now they don't all convert into immediate clients, but you better believe that they start to understand what it is that we do. Because we come from a technical background. It could just be difficult to even understand what it is we're doing. And by the way, I don't do a good job of promoting our stuff on our own show. Like it literally took me maybe 2 years ago when I finally had an executive director. It's like one of art therapy group was telling me like, Ernesto, you do all this amazing stuff, these interviews, but you don't ever talk about your like what you do. You should market. Oh, okay, I'll
So you
take that
don't
as.
throw on your own ad bumpers?
No, I did now. I started 2
You
years
started doing
ago.
that. I started
Yeah,
doing that like a year ago, and
I
I was like,
started 2 years
I'm
ago.
putting out all this stuff. I'm
Okay,
going to advertise on my
fine.
thing.
Right. And my managing partner, Mickey, always wanted me. He's like, you got to talk more about the data work. I'm like, yeah, but I'm so like, that is work. That's work. That's like, at the end of the day, I'm just more interested in, who I'm talking to and what it's like. So one thing is I heard that you also like on your show, you have some of it's not always you, right? There's other,
Yeah, we have other hosts. This is
what's
actually
that like?
incredibly important to me, right? Because it lets me use it. So, Carisha Martinez is our other host, and she's been doing a lot more and doing really, really great. And it's been fun, like working with her. But here's the other angle here: like, it can't just be the George show and Whole Whale. Like, Whole Whale has to be a bigger entity that can be run by other people besides me, and that includes in
Yeah.
the content and the face that we put forward. It's also signaling that hey, there are many voices that can and speak with this authority. And two, it is wonderful for training staff on how to speak clearly, hold an interview, be on camera, be on mic, and learn these things. Like, if you don't think your future is going to depend on your ability to create, analyze, and manipulate media, like, you don't understand. Like, we grew up with, like, all right, you got to learn how to touch type. No, you have to be able to do this stuff and not fall on the word 60 times in a row and be able to speak extemporaneously and research your guests. So we're also using it as an excuse to do that if I'm putting my cards on the table.
That's a really important one. Just sort of your staff development process, media training, media development, all of that falls into it. And I think that's a compelling argument to also start one for any organization. Have you like what have you done in terms of marketing your show? I mean, you guys are a marketing team, right? Like our goal when we started the show was like, okay, zero marketing. We're not going to do anything because I wanted to set a baseline. I wanted to see just by having a guest-based show
Yeah.
7 years ago, what would that look like over time? And I didn't need to. Fortunately, we were in a position we didn't need to pay the bills with with this show's production. It's a lot more difficult if the show is if the show is the product, right? If the show is the thing you sell on the most, that's going to be can be a long road or an issue there. But I just needed to know, like, okay, baseline, we start a show, we bring in guests at a certain pace. What are those numbers like? So then I could go to an association, go, here's the kind of experience you could expect if you did absolutely no marketing, no nothing. And by the way, let me know, what are your media assets? So tell me how big's your mailing list? I can see you only get a few hundred views per YouTube video. So we should be able to exceed this expectation. Right?
I could
That was
beat
my
that.
goal. That was
Annual 2017 report and review. Fill in title, YouTube, 17 views.
It was a struggle to explain to people why podcast, like how to get this podcasting thing going. So you have to come up with those things. But what have you guys done? What do you guys do?
So marketing wise, it's like if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, it does not make a sound. It takes the human ear to make that impact. And if your words do fall on, frankly, no ears, they make no impact. And so in our mindset, like half of it is making it and planning it, and half of it is where does this fit in our ecosystem so that it builds toward a larger tower. And so some tactics that we've used pretty effectively are, in some ways, choosing a guest and priming that guest for, all right, and you'll be sharing that with your audience. We're going to give you the embed so you can put it on your site and send it out, pinging them on, social media when we do push it out so that they, retweet, repost those pieces. Another one is looking at our own content for the most engaging content. And this is a tactic you may want to take home, that if you have an engaging piece of content, like here are the 5 things you know in your trade association how to certify for blah, blah, blah. Like everyone has it. Like this is our, it's like their coveted content. Their piece de resistance. Now, what if you did a podcast narrative with an expert about that topic of like, here's reading between the lines, what is actually happening when you go through this, and you embed it on that page. The time on that page goes through the roof. The depth and engagement can go significantly higher, and you're introducing and handshaking with a whole bunch of new people on your site. So when we create these different episodes, we're also doing it sometimes with the mindset of like, this isn't just going to go live on an XML feed, downloaded once and never found. We're using the embed to then put on a site to then have a deeper relationship opportunity for people that are just browsing through, learning about content, and especially engaging content. And then we put that episode in there, so that also drives sort of those new listeners in as well.
So that's cool. That's funny because you mentioned that, because like that is something we're working on. We have some landing pages that we buy, some ads to get traffic, to see like, hey, we have this service. Hang on one second. We have this one. Don't ever connect your phone to your Gmail account. That's just not a good idea. Just to let you guys know. Tip right there. Hot tip, hot take. But in any case, we have these landing pages where it's a specific issue. We're targeting a certain key phrase and it's technical and, whatever. But I always had a problem with that type of marketing where like, contact us if you're, here's the landing page, here's the ad, here's more information, some credibility factors. Contact us if you're interested in having help resolving some of this. But what I started to do was to just embed a specific episode of one of our podcasts that kind of touched on that topic. And I do it in a clumsy way. It wasn't very like coordinated. It wasn't like specific talking point that really gets to the ad, connects the ad and the cop. It's just kind of like, it was we're real people here too thing. It's like, you can listen to us. We're here. Like, this is me and my managing partner. And we talk a little bit like we're siblings, because we basically are. We've known each other for 20 plus years. So that's just the nature of it. And if you're okay with that and you like our, what we do, how we say things, great. Then, get in touch. And I can say it's made an impact because we've had people reference those things when they've reached out to us. They've said, because I've heard you on this clip, they sometimes can't even remember. Like, I think we heard you on a podcast or something. And they don't even know the name of the show. So I know that they're not like a fan of Through the Noise. They're just, it was one of those things. It was one of those sort of clips that they just happened to come across. And, it could also have been some LinkedIn. We started experimenting, but it's just, this is the year that we started to, okay, now we're going to market ourselves more through these other channels and just sort of explore what that's like. So it's good to hear that that's kind of what you've done, right? That's sort of Is that what you were?
Yeah, I believe
Explaining?
heavily in this ability to drive valuable attention around your brand will increase the downstream effects, assuming you're nurturing and collecting those relationships. And so we look for underpriced attention of our target audience and create value on those platforms, which is a fancy way of saying we are, sort of hawks on SEO, content marketing, and I'm very bullish on YouTube, on LinkedIn from personal accounts, and then deepening relationships with podcasts and obviously email nurturing with the sort of content lockers and those types of pieces, saying like, all right, look, give us your email, we'll send you this thing. And we've been moving a lot more actually in deeper into like a membership model at a mid-tier, because frankly we're an expensive agency, and that price point is just out of reach of a broader audience that we now have. And so in the middle now has a something we call Whole Whale University, which has a whole bunch of training courses that people can take, and resources they can download and use, from dashboards to other tools that help them frankly build capacity on their own. So we built that medium layer as we grew this like audience over time. We were like, wait a minute, like only 0.01% of the folks that come to our site can afford us, or by the way, we don't have the time to work with all of them anyway. So we've been working on building that meta layer as well.
That's interesting. So it's kind of like it could be an onboarding for some groups, an onboarding process to look up your content in that way. They're not ready to perhaps buy a big contract with you because they still don't really know if whatever.
Well, that's what you said. They don't know you. They want to. They were like, hey, who are these folks? And we're like, frankly, we're a boutique agency. We're not like a Blue State Digital who's got like 60 teams in every corner. And you're like, I don't know who we're getting. Like, you're getting the folks. You're getting Carisha. She'll be working on your ads.
Yeah. So here's a way to get to know us, and here's some content you could engage with on your own. That's not at the price point. And when you're ready, when you really feel like you got your ducks in a row, and you feel that there's a brand trust associated, then that's when they call you. And they're like, we want to do some more.
Yeah. It's attention over time, and it builds mental availability, which is a backdoor into trust. The more people see you with positive impression, the more they trust you. It's a human thing. It's one of the reasons we are all going to be saturated, very much so, with political ads nonstop, even though it says the same thing. It's just the function of the human brain that does it. And ideally, you do it with good intent. You do it with good content that hopefully takes someone from 0 to 1 on a new idea on whatever you're delivering.
Yeah, man, George, we just kind of blew through our hour, sort of. I mean, we kind of started. We were talking before, and then we were like, oh, we better press record and just grab this. But dude, let's do this again. I feel like there's more we could even go through and unpack.
Sure, I'd be happy geeking out on the technical side of the company, right? Like, I think we both play with analytics and pieces like measurement, so we can dual post this and see what the audience says.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do that, and then maybe I can drag in my my managing partner. He's a funny. He alone, actually, it's weird. We do these insights that are very, for me, a little awkward, because it's just a little bit like talking about your resume. You're just talking about the stuff you do, but it's just more awkward, right? I don't know. It just doesn't. It's hard. So we don't do them that often. But we do the insights episodes, and I'm just the dummy. They clearly do better. Those episodes do better than any of the other ones. So I guess I gotta do more of those. I guess there's more information.
Give the people what they want, man.
They want Mickey is what they want. They don't want me. They want Mickey giving me a hard time about technology. So, but I'd love to connect him and you and us. So let's see. Maybe let's do that. Let's plan on a more tech dive on one of these systems, and let's bring him on. I think you two would get along pretty well. So, George, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us on each other's podcast.
Yeah. I love it. I love your podcast. Awesome. Thank you.
For more episodes of Through the Noise, go to throughthenoise.us.